Hello there. Welcome along to another edition of the Fair Game podcast. We love you football. I'm Ian Beach, sitting in for Graham Miller today. Graham will be back for our next episode. We're releasing this on the day that the 2023 Fair Game Index is launched, so it's an incredibly busy time for everyone. If you haven't already, I strongly recommend you go to the Fair Game website, www.fairgameuk.org. You can click on the Fair Game Index tab at the top of the page, then Fair Game Index 2023, and you will be able to see how all 92 league clubs have scored. If you haven't heard already, the team that scored highest on financial sustainability was Plymouth Argyle. The top team for good governance was Cambridge United. Number one for equality standards was Lincoln City, and the club with the best fan engagement was Exeter City. And the team with the overall highest score, well, that was AFC Wimbledon, just ahead of Carlisle United and Cambridge United. Please have a look at the website and use the dashboard. Let's get people behind this, because there is a way to increase the funding for more than 90% of the clubs outside the Premier League and to incentivise clubs to be better run. On this episode, we have an interview coming up with AFC Wimbledon's head of retail, Matt Haylock. He'll be representing the team that finished top of the Fair Game Index. And we have Lincoln City's CEO, Liam Scully. It doesn't matter what level your club's at, Matt and Liam really spell out what it's like to run clubs, how they connect with the community, and quite frankly, that every club and community is different. So each individual club reflects that. I think you'll find it very interesting. Before the interview, let's catch up as usual with the Fair Game CEO, the busiest man you can imagine right now, Niall Couper.
So today is a massive day for Fair Game. It's the launch of the Fair Game Index. Now, there will be a new independent regulator. There will be a new state of play survey for football. And there will be a new financial flow for the game. All of that makes the Fair Game Index the perfect opportunity to really shape football for the better. We're all still scarred from what's happened to Bury and Macclesfield and the demise that led to those clubs having to struggle and to reform and be reborn. And we're left in the shadow now of what could be happening at Southend and Reading and Barnsley, and the list goes on and on. Indeed, 64 clubs since the start of the Premier League have had some sort of incident of administration. That cannot continue. We're in a world where it's commonplace for clubs to spend more than they earn. That's just ridiculous. Let's look at how we can end that. And that's what's the real central point, not only of today's index, but also today's podcast. We want to see a future which rewards well-run clubs, which incentivises culture change. And today, with the results of the index, we've got a good glimpse of who those well-run clubs are and what that new future of football could be under a new regulator, with all the clubs from the top 92 having been assessed by our huge team of experts. So, without further ado, I'm absolutely delighted that we've got two brilliant people for today's podcast, and that's really the focus of it all. Let's see how football really can change. Let's have a look, a glimpse, a conversation about what a fairer future of football could be. Cheers. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast.
Thanks, Niall. So you might have seen or heard Niall talking about the Fair Game Index recently. He's been incredibly busy. On to the interview now then. We have Matt Haylock, the head of retail at AFC Wimbledon, the team that scored highest on the Fair Game Index for 2023. And we have Liam Scully, the CEO at Lincoln City, the team that scored highest on equality standards. And they've been talking to Fair Game's Matt Roberts.
Fantastic stuff. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by representatives, really, of two of the star performers from the Fair Game Index from AFC Wimbledon, Matt Haylock, the head of retail, and also from Lincoln City, Liam Scully, the CEO there. So first of all, chaps, well done. You must be delighted to have figured so highly on the Fair Game Index and to see all of the hard work pay off, I guess. Matt, for you guys at AFC Wimbledon, top of the charts, actually. And like I said, a reflection really and recognition of the hard work that you guys have been doing for a number of years now.
Absolutely, we're absolutely delighted with that. As you say, it's kind of rewarding given all the work we've put in. It's kind of, I think, more essential for us than certain other clubs, given that we are fan owned. So we don't have a rich owner to rely on. So being more sustainable is actually absolutely vital for us. So no, absolutely delighted.
And Liam, similarly at Lincoln, you guys have been, to be fair, there's been a fair amount of recognition around the good work that you've been doing at Lincoln already, but it's another step and I guess another symbol really of what you guys have been doing.
Yeah, incredibly proud and honoured to end up, towards the top of the charts for this. I think from our point of view, Lincoln City Football Club, it's a pillar of the community, and right from the very beginning, the ownership and the leadership have always talked about we're only the temporary custodians of this great football club, and we want to leave it in a better state that we can, than we found it. And we firmly believe that should be each ownership group's aims and responsibilities. So yeah, to feel like we're tracking and heading in the right direction and have some external lens on that, say we're doing okay. That's really proud to have achieved that.
It's quite interesting actually to have the both of you on at the same time, because what we've got is two very different contrasting ownership models. They're both clearly working well, which I guess goes to show that it isn't a case of one size fits all across the divisions. I suppose for you guys, Matt, at AFC Wimbledon, the way that the club has risen up and the way that it was formed in the first place, it has to be fan-owned. And for you, Liam, again, there is another way of doing it, but it doesn't have to be compromised.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've always said whenever we've been asked to contribute to the reform that's going on in our game, or people kind of looking at the structures, is we don't think that Lincoln City is the model and it should be the model for everybody. We respect that each club has its own soul, it has its own heartbeat, it has its own history, and that needs to be considered as part of any model. And I think the proudest thing that I think I can say that we've tried to do at Lincoln City is just align ourselves to that wider ethos, the community of the football club, what it means to the people of Lincoln. It's not that it means more to the people of Lincoln than AFC Wimbledon does to the people of Wimbledon, or Carlisle and the people of Carlisle. It's just about what's right for Lincolnshire, and what's right for our fan base. So yeah, I think we have to respect that there are 72 clubs in the EFL, 92 in the professional game system, or in the top two leagues in England, and there are multiple different models, and I think that's where the Fair Game Index excels, in the fact that it creates that model, in the fact that it's not just a singular way, this is how it has to be done. It accepts that there are fan-owned clubs, it accepts those that are shareholders and ownership that sit outside of that. So yeah, for us to be have external ownership that are committed to that, it's great to even be in the same echelons as AFC Wimbledon and others that we've mentioned.
I totally echo that. It's definitely not a one size fits all. We're kind of a bit different in how we were almost forced into this position, and trust me, I think we're still learning every day. It's not, there's no textbook way to doing what we've been doing for the last 20 odd years. So and there have been obviously challenges on the pitch for the last couple of years, and that can lead to people questioning, do we want to keep going on like this? But I think the main priorities are the same. Serving the local community. We've got the Don's Local Action Group, who have done very well. They started up in the pandemic, and they set up food banks and everything. They're now a national charity, and we've had tremendous buy-in since moving back to Plough Lane. We've had tremendous buy-in from the local community there as well. And just I think they are buying into the whole sustainability aspect of the club. the engagement between the club and the fans as well.
What are the main challenges then, Matt? And what are the main, I guess, lessons that you've learned through this model over the past, what's it been, 20 years?
Yeah, I think so. We've recently brought in, we've changed the structure a little bit definitely on the footballing side. We've brought in kind of like the head of football operations. We've tried to do it by committee in the past, and we haven't had, we've had decent success up to a level, and then it kind of went a bit slippy. Certainly from my point of view, being a fan-owned club, I'm sitting there setting prices on stuff that we're buying, and it is a very delicate balance, especially in the cost of living crisis that we're going through at the moment. Is trying to give people a fair price, value for money, but also trying to raise significant funds to keep the club going. Amongst various other departments, the retail department is a very, very big part of what we do. So it's the challenges are as well about listening to the fan base as well, and engaging with the fan base and taking on board what they say, because they are, I think, you compare them to some of the Premier League clubs that are completely run like businesses. They are much bigger stakeholders in our football club than they are in others. So it's imperative that we listen to our fans' voices and take on board what they're saying and try and create. And I think that has changed. We've got a new MD in Danny Macklin. We've got the new head of football operations, Craig Cope, and they're both really trying to push for more engagement with the fan base. And so I think that's the kind of lessons we're learning over the last few years. And it's a hard. We're also learning how hard League Two is as well. But hopefully things will be a little bit better this season.
Fan engagement is such a massive thing, isn't it, Liam? And I know it's at the heart of what you do at Lincoln, not just in terms of communicating with the fans, but also offering something that's a little bit more than just the potential and the promise of performance on the pitch, or results on the pitch, I should say.
Yeah, I think fan engagement over the last 3, 4, 5 years, it's become quite a bit of a buzzword. And when you have to kind of distill it and really understand what that means. And like I said, as I said before, it can mean different things to different clubs. I think for us, it's about having two-way dialogue. It's about ensuring that we share the context of the decisions that we make. So transparency isn't about opening your books and showing absolutely everything. We're a commercial entity that compete against other commercial entities. We have to have some level of commercial sensitivity that keeps us competitive and tries to give us an edge over the other 71 clubs that we compete against. But I think what we've always found is if you share the context of the decisions that you're making, people may not agree with you, but what they can see is that you've been diligent in your approach, that you've thought about it, and it's not just been a glib decision made, just made, off the flip of a coin. And one of the early kind of, I've been fortunate to have been in football for over 20 years, and as a chief exec now for 6, and a chief operating officer for 4 years before that. And one of the conversations I always remember having fans is, look, we promise we don't wake up every morning thinking, how on earth can we annoy them today? What is it that we can do to knock you off? But there are decisions that we have to make that is in the greater good of the overall, and that can impact people. So if we take the fans on the journey and that, if we engage with them, even if they don't agree with us, then at least there's that context, and hopefully that just gets that little bit of empathy and builds that understanding. And again, a lot of what, one of the mistakes that we made earlier when you were talking to Matt earlier, when you do surveys or when you do outbound communication and ask people for their feedback, the errors that we made was then never go out on the back of that feedback and say, what have we done? What did it influence? There's almost like that dearth of what happens next. So I think when you say it's almost two-way dialogue, it's making sure that that's constant. So if it's an outbound and inbound, it then still has to be followed by and then what and what next. And I think that's incredibly important. So of course you've got to be mindful of the cold burgers or that terrible away kit, or putting those season ticket prices up to something that is deemed unpalatable. But I think it's just trying to look at that collective at all points and communicating those contexts for those decisions. And that's what we get paid for. If we get it right, we get the plaudits, and if we get it wrong, there's no shortage of people wanting to tell you, how and why you've got it wrong. But we accept that based on people understanding why we've come to these conclusions.
I think just to jump in there, I have to champion that word, transparency. And I absolutely agree. It is not opening everything up, but it is explaining your thought process in your decision making, and showing that bit of empathy as well. I try and do that a lot in the retail department. So we have just increased the price of our shirt, for example, and I've explained to people that the price of our shirt has gone up by over 30%. We were forced into a bit of we had to change supplier because the distributor went into administration for our last supplier. But so we've been kind of forced into this, but we've said it's gone up 30%. We've increased it by 6%. So we have tried to bear in mind the current situation around the country, and we've also kept the kids' prices and the infants' prices exactly the same. So, but we did recently have a fans forum, and we released almost like not redacted, but highlights of the fans forum. And the fans said, "Why aren't you releasing the whole lot?" And it kind of went back and forth, and probably went on for a little bit too long. And in the end, the whole thing was released, and everyone was like, "Well, what was the problem? Why didn't you really?" So I think it is the transparency, as you say, doesn't have to go the whole way, but if you don't give fans a fair amount of information, there is always that suspicion that you're hiding something from them. And I absolutely agree as well with the statement that you don't wake up thinking, how am I going to annoy people today? Especially when things aren't going so well on the pitch, and we are so close to our fan bases, because we're basically all fans ourselves. You get actually quite paranoid, and you're worried that one little mistake is going to get absolutely jumped on. So it's actually the opposite. You're waking up thinking, God, please don't let me annoy anyone today.
How can the Fair Game Index help in that respect then, chaps, do you think? Because obviously there's a couple of metrics that we're all familiar with of how football clubs' performance is measured. One is results on the pitch, and also financial performance is another one as well. But now we have something that offers a much broader view of how the leadership of organisations are performing. Do you think it's going to be a useful way for you to engage further with the fan base and as I said, measure the general performance of the leadership of the clubs?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be incredibly useful. And I think one of the things that it provides is that benchmark, or it provides that that kite mark even to some degree, and just holds that mirror up to yourselves and asks you, makes you ask yourself, are you doing enough in that area? When the results are published, you look at other clubs, you look at what they're doing. And as I say, we're all competitive beasts. So, we'll be looking at each other and saying, well, why does Red Town FC score more than Blue Town FC in that area? What can we do more? And I think things like that, it's incredibly helpful, not just for our competitive edge, but it equally makes you reflect on it, and it makes you look at what else is going out there. Because the one thing I'm incredibly passionate about is I know we are all competitive, and I know we'd all do anything for a win on a Saturday at 3:00. But the community of football and football clubs, we do work pretty well together outside of the match days. And I think what we have seen in the game is it's become far more inclusive. It's become far more open to all. Our stadiums, our terraces are far more welcoming and hospitable places to attend football than they've ever been. But that's because we've all been pushing each other to push those boundaries and looking at each other in order to find those additional ways. it wasn't that many years ago that family stands weren't even a thing, or family areas, and then that becomes part of it because somebody. So you just need those trailblazers to push the envelope and to challenge, and that's what this index does. It shows you who the trailblazers are. It gives you a mark and it gives you a ranking that then makes you look at yourself. So yeah, a huge advocate. Incredibly honoured to have our position within it. But the first thing we did was look at others and see what we could do better as well.
I think, I'd agree with all of that. I think it also provides maybe a bit of context for the fan base as well, in that, maybe things aren't that great on the pitch, and I know that's probably 99% of what they want to see, but there is a lot going on behind the scenes to make a Saturday more engaging for the local community, and lots of stuff going on, as I said, behind the scenes to try and be a better football club, really. And like I said, the context that we are not like other football clubs where they will have a multi-billionaire owner. So it is, and what we're doing here is even more vital. So the fact that we're doing it very well, I think, should make both us and our fan base proud.
Absolutely. I think as a fan myself, I want to have a club that I'm proud of, and that comes down to results on the pitch, but also what they stand for, what the culture is, and how they help the community. And actually, I think that's an important thing. We've already talked a little bit about fan engagement, but also community responsibility, right? Things like there's always a temptation to take unethical sponsorship deals, maybe, which aren't in the interest of the fan base. And what's interesting to me a little bit as well is that all the top performers on this particular index, the very top performers, that is, are outside the top two divisions. So I don't know. I just wonder what you think about that, and also especially for Lincoln, I suppose, Liam, as well, because when you're fighting to try and get into the Championship, when is it that challenge becomes that bit harder to maintain and to sort of live by those values, I guess, as well, the higher you move up?
Look, definitely, the challenge does become harder the further up the football pyramid you get, and you just have to look at the kind of average annual losses to see what those challenges look like. And there are some eye-watering numbers in our division alone, and there are eye-watering numbers in the divisions above. But I don't think for us, and we've always said this, that as custodians of the club, success can't be achieved if along the way you've sold your soul, because that then at that point you've sold your soul for whatever period of on-field success, but then it's you can't guarantee that. And I think the football club, the bricks, the mortar, everything that it's about has to stand and has to be more than that. Now, of course, it's about the interpretation of that, and of course there are certain things at times that you have to be sensible in your compromises, but I think that's where you have to draw your red lines. And you have to understand what you will and won't do. Transparently, one of the things that we did 4 or 5 years ago was sold the stadium naming rights, to LNER. Now, Sincil Bank is synonymous with football; everybody knows what it is. But that was when we made that decision, it was around, if we don't do this, then we are leaving something on the table that our competitors do have an advantage over. So. Again, it's not necessarily about always making the most popular decision, but it's about understanding what that macro picture looks like and how you are competitive, but then equally, your non-negotiables. And I think, every club will have that debate at some point about the non-negotiable, whether it's a sponsor of a non-wholesome brand that's put a number on the table that just is so tantalizing to take. Or it might be a player with a checkered history, or that's almost kind of management's job to assess the value. But when you have ownership that really clearly set out and mandate the parameters that you're working to, for myself as an executive, that makes it really clear, and I'm really understanding of where my red lines are. I think the only thing, without getting too deep into it, we have to protect against is as those ownerships change and rotate. We don't want to end up with a football pyramid that it's almost, the idea is to flip a football club like it is to flip a house or flip any other piece of investment, because that's when short-term decisions come in. So we've just got to get that right balance in our game overall, and hopefully at Lincoln City, AFC Wimbledon and others, that's what we're trying to do. Do you know what? If others make accelerated progress ahead of us on the field, but we've not sold our soul, honestly, I can sleep at night and I can take that. We're still fiercely competitive. We still want to win, but it's not at all costs.
Yeah, again, echo all of that. I think sustainability is key, because the short-termism will be the death of the game as we know it. I think if it just becomes you're constantly right, we're going to use all of your money of one owner and then we'll look for another one, that is just unsustainable. So you have to have a model that will work long term, and if that means that you find a level, then you find a level with your supporter base, but then you have to be clever, and obviously we've got our new MD who's looking at bringing a lot more revenue in than we previously had by trying to be clever. We're hoping to reap the rewards of that. But like I said, the short-termism is, I think it's a reflection of society a little bit at the moment, that everyone wants everything now. There's someone I was talking to my mate the other day. Do you remember doing the football pools when you'd send it off in the post? You'd have to wait a week to just kind of see how you did, and now it's so everything is kind of like everything now, and so I think that has crept into football a bit, and we have to be very, very careful with that.
And it requires strong leadership and a particular type of leadership. What does that look like for you guys at board level, Liam? And how do you make sure that you continue to recruit, in terms of your leadership team, people with the same values and also with diverse views and different lenses as well, which, as we all know, is also key to running a sustainable organization?
Yes, so very, very quickly, the board composition at Lincoln City, we have investors based in South Africa, we have investors based in the US, we also have local people, and part of what they bring to Lincoln City Football Club is that big business experience. They're very well respected and very successful professionals in their own right. But right from the very beginning of this and the journey, and our chairman Clive Nates, his whole engagement, the onboarding of people, the engagement with them it's anchored in around what is best for Lincoln City, and he really does set the tone, and we're all incredibly indebted to work for him and engage with him, on a day-to-day basis. The other parts that we've added to that, initially through the ITV digital collapse way back when. We have the Supporters Trust have 2 seats on the board as well. They're an incredibly important voice, and I know Supporters Trusts are going through a difficult time on a bigger scale at the moment, just because of, like Matt said, everything's into the immediacy. Gone are the days of committee meetings, people transact over WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and those types of mediums now. So getting the new blood in to be interested in Supporters Trusts and those type of organisations are difficult, but it's really important that you have that internal audit and that internal check before you go and make a fool of yourself externally sometimes. And even, I think, over the course of my time at Lincoln City, the board members from the trust and that represent the foundation on the board, they very seldomly had to, or never had to intervene or speak up or counter. But their view and their counsel has always been respected and appreciated. And I think that's for me is the tone and the theme. It's about that appreciation and understanding. And then very quickly, in terms of the executive and how we looked at that, I'm not saying that we're right in this, but we've made a real commitment to employ people based on traits, not necessarily based on their CV or the skill. We've defined Lincoln City traits that we believe are important to us. without doing our industry down. We're not NASA, we're not brain surgery. It's almost like we take the approach that we can teach people the technical skills, but it's the traits that we look for. It's finding a way. It's being streetwise. It's having capacity. It's having resilience. It's being forward thinking. They're the types of things that we look for in our people. That ultimately are the real stars of the show, because they're driving the business and they're driving the interactions with the fans and moving the football club on behalf of the fans. So I think you just have to connect all the dots. Football clubs are quite clunky. They are quite cumbersome. For only small businesses. You've got retail, you've got the food and beverage offer, you've got a commercial team, you've got for small businesses, you have multiple facets to that, and it's really difficult getting a singular voice and singular tone, even you are a small industry, and that's why people by people. It all comes down to people. It all comes down to leadership, and we're very lucky at Lincoln City to have a chairman that really sets the tone, and we all just follow his act, to be honest.
I love that. Brilliant. How about Wimbledon, Matt? I mean, I guess in a way, the culture and the diverse representation of fans, especially at the top level of the club, it's an organic thing anyway. That kind of takes care of itself, does it?
Yeah, I mean, so our club is owned by the trust. So the trusts kind of are like. So that they're the ones that Danny Macklin will report to, for example. And so you'll have a Don's Trust board. So Danny's reporting into them, and it can be challenging at times, I'm sure, because like we were talking about just before, about making decisions that might not sit well with a group of people who are fans, but are on the edge of making you a lot of money. So it's about that kind of, but that's where our fan base comes in. Well, the Don's Trust membership, and they get to vote on key decisions like that. But going on to how you recruit there, it's absolutely key. In my department, there's 2 full-time staff, and for the amount of revenue that we bring in, that's ridiculous. But we're both fans, so we go above and beyond every single day because we love. It's like we work for a company, but we actually love that company as part of our life. So it is. I would imagine it's very difficult. I'm not in the, I've only had to employ one person, and I knew that he was a big fan and that he would work hard. So that wasn't that difficult. But I'd imagine hiring people in other positions is extremely difficult as well. Because especially if they're not fans and it is kind of a job, you have to get the buy-in from those people that you're employing. Because this isn't working for a football club, is not, especially one that's fan owned or doesn't have a rich owner, it's not a normal job. You are going to have to put in a lot of extra work, and as I say, you really need the buy-in of the people that you're hiring to make it work.
Yeah, fascinating. I think one of the things that stood out to me over the course of this conversation is the parallels between ultimately the culture at these clubs, regardless of the ownership structure, and also the geographical locations. You could hardly get to, more different communities really than the city of Lincoln and the west of inner city London. But as a final thought, and I know that you guys are proud of your position in these results, but also won't be taking any kind of moral high ground or sitting on your hands either. What do you look at now in terms of improving your own performance across the index? So when these results get brought out again in 12 months' time, you've done even better. Are there particular areas where you can see in your own specific circumstances where, because as we said, there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to all clubs, but for your individual clubs, are you kind of pinpointing things at this stage already, or what?
Yeah, Matt, there's definitely a few things that you look at that other clubs do, certainly in their kind of communication matrix, that I think is incredibly impressive. I think, as you rightly alluded, Lincoln City and AFC Wimbledon were very different entities, and one of the things that we are is we lose money every year at the moment in time. Now, part of us, we need redistribution and reform to play its role and to help us. But then I think the most exciting thing is we are custodians of clubs at this moment in time of the game, where we are trying to drive change, not just for the next few years, for future generations. And I think it's so important that we wear two hats, that we work really hard for Lincoln City and AFC Wimbledon and the other clubs that that all the executives will represent. But we have to vote, we have to use our voice, we have to use our say for the best of football overall right now. And at times those areas can become conflated. People often forget that the EFL, it isn't an entity. We are the EFL. It belongs to the members. We set the rules. So when the fans have a go at the EFL for doing X, Y, and Z, they're probably right, but it's us as 72 clubs that they're actually having a go at, because we set the rules. So it's just maintaining that high level of responsibility that we have in this crucial 12, 24, maybe hopefully not as long as that, 36 months. And then if we do achieve this reset and reform, then we've just got to act incredibly responsibly with that, to then ensure that we have football clubs for generations to come, and we're not reliant on I'm very lucky that we've got the investors at Lincoln City, but our whole aim is not to be wholly reliant on them every year in, year out. It's about how do we create a truly financially sustainable football club. Without getting on my soapbox, we're competing against teams last year in the division, £62.5 million debt on the balance sheet, 58 million, 25 million, 20, 13, 10, 7.5, 7 million, 4 million, holding debt on the balance sheet, and Lincoln City is trying to operate in that field. We're not asking to level the playing field, we're just asking people to stop putting other clubs at risk. That means we're competing with that same intention. So yeah, apologies for the long-winded answer, but I think it's just making sure that we act as custodians of football. I think that's the important part of this, as well as Lincoln City, AFC Wimbledon, Carlisle and others.
Yeah, there's a bigger picture.
I'd agree with all of that. I think just because we both finished very high, it doesn't mean there's no room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. So you're going to look at your own score. You're not going to have scored top in every department. So you look at the departments you didn't score so highly in, and then you look at what other clubs are doing, and you brainstorm and you try and go again. Football's evolving, like we said. That things we talked about, how the immediacy of life today, but it's also the speed of change as well, and you have to evolve with that as well. So we're constantly changing, trying to develop, and it's carrying on with that really. And I think we've got so many passionate people at the football club. And I do need to mention that I said there was only 2 full-time staff in my department. I will get a severe earache from my wife if I don't mention that we are helped out tremendously by a fantastic group of volunteers. We have probably over 100 volunteers. So on a match day in the shop, for example, we have 7 volunteers who are there every 2 weeks, working very hard for no money. And so both of myself and the other full-time employee, both our wives are volunteers on a match day. So I just thought I'd better get that in there before I get in trouble. But going back to the question you just asked, it's out of, like I said, I think I started with, and I'll end with saying it's out of necessity for us, really. We are not looking to sell out our football club anytime soon. So I don't think we have a choice but to be smarter. And we're working out that the best way of doing that is engaging with the local community, and getting them on board, and pushing forward with trying to be clever with our ideas and bringing money in.
Well, look, chaps, I wish you both all the best with that. Congratulations once again on the performance up to now, and to all of those volunteers as well, and of course all the other stakeholders and board members involved at both clubs. And I guess, sadly, I suppose in a way, for some other club owners and fans, the best way of convincing them that that this is the right way forward is by you guys achieving success on the pitch and seeing this best practice off the pitch show results on it as well, which I'm sure it will do this year. And
I wish I could control that. I really do.
That's football, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what keeps us coming back. Liam, Matt, thank you so much for your time. And as I said, congrats once again and best of luck for the rest of this year.
Thanks very much, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you too to Matt Haylock, the head of retail at AFC Wimbledon, and to Liam Scully, the CEO at Lincoln City. Thank you for listening. You can keep up to date with Fair Game if you follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We're on TikTok as well. You'll find the links in the podcast description. So just click on those and that will take you straight through to our socials. We've posted lots of videos this week announcing the teams that finished top in the 4 main categories and overall, so please check that out. There are acceptance speeches on there. It was a bit like the Oscars. Thank you to everyone who helped with that. Dion Dublin announced one of the awards. We're going to be back soon with another episode, and we're going to finish this week with some of the words from AFC Wimbledon's managing director Danny Macklin reacting to his club finishing top of the 2023 index. I think he sums it all up.
Football needs fixing. Football needs a fairer distribution of wealth. Football needs a fairer game, and that has to happen now for the sustainability of the game that we're all proud of worldwide and for the security of the pyramid up and down the country.